All right, guys, welcome back to another video. My name is CFI Munden. If you guys like this video, you guys can like and subscribe. That would help a lot. I haven't been posting a lot lately, and like I said in my previous videos, the reason for that is because I've been super busy with being a flight instructor. It's a beyond full-time job, to be honest, because you work from, if you're lucky as an instructor, 8 a.m. to like 5 p.m. But then you got to get home, you got to catch up with students, you got to do scheduling. So anyone who's a flight instructor knows that the job never really ends. You're constantly talking to people and constantly trying to work out different schedules and stuff like that. So it's pretty challenging. So I've been really busy, but like today's like this when the weather is bad, I can stop and I can pause and I can make a video. And I wanted to answer the question that I think a lot of you guys either have asked yourself or you're starting to, maybe you're finishing up your instrument rating or your commercial rating and you're thinking about becoming a CFI. You're like, how do I build these hours to get to where I want to go? And I think the agreement upon everyone in the industry right now at our level, right, time builder level, student level, is that CFI is the fastest way to build hours. And it looks like that is true. Okay, I know that there's some alternatives. You can do survey, pipeline. There's some gigs in Alaska above 500 hours that you can get. But most likely, you're going to become a flight instructor. So the question that I want to answer today is, should you become a flight instructor? And what is the life of a flight instructor like? Basically, what's the nitty gritty? Okay, and of course, it's subjective. This is my opinion, but let's start off by answering what's it like being a flight instructor. Let me tell you, it has some pros and cons depending on where you work. Flight instructors, there's this kind of price you pay with being a flight instructor at most schools where they pay you absolutely terribly and it's hardly a living wage. But the trade is that, hey, we will pay you shit and you'll take it because you want those hours. Okay, so they can get away with paying you almost nothing at most flight schools. Most flight schools, at least in Idaho, will pay you anywhere between $18 an hour and $25 an hour. But when you break that down per month after maintenance comes in, you lose those flights, weather, student cancellations, you're probably making anywhere between $1,200 and like $2,500 a month. Like I said, depending on where you work and how much you fly, but that's about how much I was pulling in on as a flight instructor at the college that I used to work at. And yeah, it's pretty rough. It's not really livable. And I have a family and I have a kid, and I could not support a family on that. So that's one thing to think about, is that you're probably not going to get paid very fairly. And it's a risky job. It's a stressful job. There's a lot of pressure on you from the students and from the school, and you're playing with a lot of money from the school and from the students. I mean, think about it. You're flying the school's $250,000 plane, and then every time a student goes up, they're paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for your instruction. So when things go wrong, the first person often get blamed isn't necessarily the school. It's not even the plane. It's not even the mechanics. It's most of the time the flight instructor takes the hit in one form or another, depending on the vibe of the school and the overall culture of the school. It depends. But that's something to consider, is that if you haven't heard yet, the pay sucks. It is bad. However, I have gone from being a public instructor to a private instructor, and I make double as a private and flight instructor. So when I was working at the college, I was getting paid $25 an hour after taxes, $21 an hour, averaging 30 to 50 hours a month. So anywhere between like $1,200 and $1,600 a month of income. And as a private instructor now, I charge $50 an hour because I'm at that point to where I can give really good instruction that's worth $50 an hour. So I get what I believe that I'm worth. My students happy, they get my full time and attention, and everyone wins. Okay, so you can go private instruction if you can find a plane and if you can find the student base for it. That's the hard part. That's why not a lot of people go private, is because they have a really hard time getting that student base and finding a plane. So that's very challenging. But once you get it, it's like pretty lucrative, okay? But most people don't want to put in the work to get students, and I understand why. They'd rather go through school, pay their dues, and then move on. Totally understandable, okay? Day-to-day life as a flight instructor, it can be it could be very, very boring, very, very repetitive, and they can be terrifying. and you can be at the edge of your seat depending on the student and what level they're at and how far you let things go in the pattern and final and stuff like that. But imagine this, you're a pretty new flight instructor with a brand new student trying to teach them how to land. A lot of pressure, right? A lot of stress, but that's part of the job. You start to get used to it over time, and you start to know what the student can and cannot get away with at certain points. You let the student kind of take things further because you understand trends a little bit more, and you're just more experienced, right? Because you have to let students get away with things, or make mistakes rather, and because that's how they're going to learn. So if you're one of those flight instructors that's constantly on the flight controls and manipulating the controls and talking too much, you're not really giving your students space to learn, but you're doing that because you're coming from like a place of anxiety, which, you know, is understandable when you're playing with plane like that in your lives, essentially. So the overall job can be very, very boring, but very, very scary. But overall, I would say it's a pretty fulfilling job. I don't want to sit here and just talk about the cons of it. It's a fulfilling job. You're helping people accomplish their dreams and their goals. And when you have a really highly motivated student who's actually going home and studying and putting in the work that they have to at home, it is very fulfilling to go there and watch a student go from having no idea what anything is in the plane, like nothing. They don't know what the vertical speed indicator is. They don't know what the attitude indicator is. They don't know up from down, nothing, right? To going from soloing. And that, as an instructor, is one of the best feelings, when you can take a student that didn't know anything and all of a sudden you're watching them fly around in the pattern all by themselves, buttering the landing. So it's super fulfilling. It's very emotional. It's always emotional for me when a student solos, because it's like very, how can I say this? It is like the essence of humanity. You're taking somebody who didn't know anything about something, and all of a sudden they're accomplishing it through all the challenges that they've met along the way, and you as a flight instructor. So it's almost like flying poetry, in my opinion. You're just watching these people do something that a very small amount of the population has ever done, and I love watching it. And it's really satisfying seeing students pass their check ride after they invested all this time, blood, sweat, and tears into this goal, and to see them come out of the check ride. Because, you know, as a flight instructor, you're always at a distance watching your students get out of the plane with a DPE, and you're like, well, they made it to the full 2 hours, and they're both smiling, so that's good. And seeing that smile on their face, I mean, you know, it just makes it all worth it. Those long night cross countries, looking at their logbooks, getting out there every day when the weather is good, bad, you know, whatever it is, and you're working just as hard as the student, really. I never knew how stressful a check ride could be for flight instructors until it became one. And then your head is like spinning about their logbook and their endorsements and their requirements. And if you trained them right, and you know, you're thinking, their steep turns kind of sucked a couple days ago. Hopefully that doesn't bite them in the butt. And you know, were they ready? Are they ready? You have a lot of those voices in your head, and it's stressful. It's more stressful I promise you, it's more stressful for the instructor than it is for the student. But yeah, so there is some like human factors that go into being a flight instructor. I think it's like one of the most unhealthy jobs that you can have in the aviation industry, just because the stress level is pretty high. You know, at the end of the day, like, what is a pilot but a glorified commuter? So you are sitting for 8 hours a day, burning virtually no calories. If you let it, your health can get out of control really fast. You'll probably, within the first couple of months, end up gaining some weight if you're not careful and not hitting the gym. You become very snacky because of those cortisol levels. They spike, and you want sugary, sweet, stress-relieving foods. At least I do. So you're constantly dehydrated. You can't be hydrated, because if you're hydrated, that means you got to pee a lot. And when you got to pee a lot, that just interferes with your flying, because you're in a plane. There's no bathrooms in there. So as an instructor, you're constantly hungry. You're constantly dehydrated, and you don't really get any breaks if your schedule's full. And you don't even really want any breaks, because if you have breaks, that means you have 2 hour slots that are empty. And you don't really want that as an instructor, because, you know, you're not getting paid, you're not flying. So having breaks necessarily isn't the best thing as a flight instructor, because our breaks aren't 15 to 20, 30 minutes long. We don't get lunches. Okay, our breaks is when a student cancels or the plane goes down, and we're sitting there for 2 to 4 hours at a time. So that's one thing to consider, is that you don't really get lunches. So you're kind of eating in between flights, which is only about 15 minutes. So you're like briefing the student, like, yeah, okay, continue. Okay, tell me about so. So, there's that aspect of it. But you do build hours pretty quick in the good flying seasons. And if you're at a good school or you have a lot of private students, you could average anywhere between 55 and like 75 hours a month, which is pretty good. I know of a local flight school where they don't get paid anything. They get paid like $21 an hour, but they fly like 55 to 75 hours a month, which is pretty good. Okay, so yeah, that's like pretty much the truth that I can think of about being a flight instructor. You're probably not going to get any benefits. You're not going to get paid anything. It's a very fulfilling career, meaning that you get to help people accomplish their goals. But my suggestion is that if you're going to go into this, if you are already in this, is to forget about the airlines. Forget about it. Okay, 1,500 hours. It's a goal that you'll eventually get. Right now, I highly suggest, or when you do become a flight instructor, just focus on being the best flight instructor that you can. Okay, take care of your students and don't just milk them for hours. Don't be a Hobbs whore. Don't run that Hobbs, 3-4 hours at a time when really they only need like 1.5 hours, especially when they're new students. Okay, that doesn't benefit the student. It only benefits you, and it's going to come back to bite you in the ass eventually when you are taking advantage of your students. And it's really easy to do, very tempting to do, but just don't do it. It's not worth it in the long run, okay? And when I say forget about the 1,500 hours, it's because always focusing on that mark, oh, when I get 1,500 hours, I'm going to go to the airlines. It's going to kind of take you out of the moment. It's going to kind of take you out of the journey. You're here now. You're going to be here for a while, okay? So why not just forget about the airlines for now, put it on the back burner. You know it's going to get there eventually, or whatever career you're trying to get, private or corporate or whatever, okay? It's going to get there. Right now, just enjoy what you have going, okay? You got a job, you're getting hours, you're doing something new, you're doing something exciting, you're helping people out. Just sit here and focus on that. That's what I suggest, okay? You constantly worrying about 1,500 hours and, oh, I've only got this many hours today and this many hours this month. That's just going to torture you, okay? And it's going to make you a worse flight instructor. So I get it. It's a hard job. You get burnt out. You get tired. But, do your best to really give the student all you got on every single flight, and that will come back to you and it'll pay dividends because your students are going to appreciate you. You're going to, if you get a good reputation as a flight instructor who actually cares about the student and trains them well and is thorough and is safe, you're going to have so many people reaching out to you to fly with you because they know that you're good. And it's kind of hard to find like a really good flight. It's very easy to find a mediocre flight instructor. It's very hard to find a very good flight instructor. And when people find out that you're good, and being good is not so much about having a lot of experience. I mean, that matters. But there's another aspect into play when it comes to being a good flight instructor, which is like, are you patient? Are you willing to change some rules of your flying in order to help the student? Meaning like some students don't like trimming in steep turns. Some students like trimming in steep turns. Some instructors are like, you will always trim in a steep turn. And then I've realized as I gotten more experience, you don't just do whatever you feel like is safe and it's comfortable and it keeps you within the standards. And, I'll give you little tips and tricks here and there and give you some different ways to do things. But, a lot of instructors, they get caught up on just doing certain things the same way every single time and not adjusting their knowledge or their teaching style to that student. Okay, so it's very easy to find a mid-flight instructor, but it's hard to find a good one. Once you're a good one, word gets out, everyone's going to want to fly with you. I promise you, you're going to have so many people calling you, texting you. Your schedule's going to be so booked, you won't even... My schedule's so booked, I hardly even look at my scheduler these days to see who I'm flying with. I just open up the schedule. Okay, I got to be there at 8 a.m. I'm flying this person, blah, 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 and that's it. I used to like change things around and call people and text people and like, hey, you want to fly? Now it's like, I give them access to my schedule and they just book it out, okay? Because I've developed a reputation of being a good flight instructor. So I suggest you do the same. Once you pick up a good reputation as a good flight instructor and people like you and they trust you, you're going to get opportunities from other places, okay? So yeah, that's the life of a flight instructor. That's what you can expect. Pay your dues, okay? You're here now. Try to enjoy it the best that you can. I know it's hard. I know it's stressful. I know that you're probably dehydrated and you're not eating very well, and you're working. Students are calling you all the time, and maybe you have a few students who are giving you a hard time and stressing you out or calling you too much or whatever it is. But we're all here now, okay? This is part of our journey, and enjoy it the best that you can. But yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable summary about the life of a flight instructor. But I'll make a video about me going private and what that looked like for me and how I got that. But I'm like making way more money now. It's actually nice to like not worry about not being able to feed my family and pay rent. Okay, so yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions, and if you do, go ahead and put them below. But yeah, I'll see you for the next one.